So, moving on, there's nothing wrong with standing for justice. I've always been a person who has been very justice oriented. I think it's because of things that have happened to me, wanting to stick up for the little man, um, things of that nature, and had to learn the hard way that everybody who claims to be the so-called little man isn't. um, and may just be the person who people were right about, or at least your first inclination, because people didn't say anything about this person, but your first inclination about this person, your first gut reaction was right. That this person has a couple of screws loose, and when the person told you they had a couple of screws loose, you should have listened to them instead of feeling bad for them. And maybe there's a reason why some of the bizarre things they were saying to you about people disliking them and all this other stuff, and well, they were about driven to unaliving themselves and jumping off a building, and apparent police had to be called. I mean, that should say all of it in itself, that this is a very unstable person who will do anything, and I should have listened then and stayed away. About the sickness that this person claims to have, and yeah, very malignant. Very malignant. So there's nothing wrong with sticking up for justice. It's nothing wrong with seeing something that's not right and speaking out. There's nothing wrong with that. There's something wrong with being an accuser. Meaning, I point to everybody else, but I never look at me. I don't care if I come to court with my hands covered in blood or not. These people, and you could be wrong. Maybe this person doesn't even care if anybody has done anything wrong or not. They just want to accuse everyone and to throw the track off of them. Maybe they just don't care. And this is not just about the Julie Roys. There are people like this, and it doesn't surprise me that people who are just these obsessed with victims, obsessed with abuse, is an abuser themselves. It really doesn't surprise me. I've seen into these women's groups, and people can come at me if they want, where these women are abusive themselves. They have battered their husbands. They battered their children. They don't even like their children. They don't even like their children. They're malicious towards other women. They have sucked violent men after other women. That was true. A woman who chose not to be a party to certain things, apparently, according to these women, deserves to be beaten up. I know some niggas who could go down to so and so place and beat up this woman, but yet they will champion on abusive men, or not champion on, but talk about abuse, that they are the champions for women who have been abused, but yet it's okay to abuse that woman, And I've talked to women, even in the group I've been in, about stalking or other things, or narcissistic abuse, or whatever it is, and they've confirmed the same thing. They've been thrown out of groups. They've been chased, they've been stalked, they've been abused, they've been hurt, they've been found. These are just toxic women who, again, have the same mentality as Cyrex, is because I was born a certain way, but that's him. Nothing I do is wrong. Or just because something bad and unfortunate happened in my childhood, or maybe or teens or adulthood, nothing I do is wrong. And how dare you say that it is? You are a victim blamer. And this extremist view on what victim blaming is, and it's not even in context. Victim blaming is when a reasonable person would... Example. If I'm asleep in my bed, and Ted Bundy we had a 2.0, looks just like him, 3.0, breaks into the house and clubs me to death with a 2x4, and somebody says, well, she should have gotten better locks on her doors. That's victim blaming. There's nothing more that could have been done in that situation. People have a right to shut their eyes and go to bed. You know, um, what a reasonable person would have done. Or it's more, if somebody is in a situation and even a reasonable person would not be able to escape this. If somebody's coming up to you with dukes up and there's no means of escape, and whatever, let's say you shoot them, and people say, well, you should have left that situation before it came to that. Well, number one, this person didn't know this person. Number two, there's only so much you can do when somebody's out for blood, even if you did know this person. And at some point, talking is over, and you can't force someone to get mental health treatments. If you're being stalked, you've told the police. They're not doing anything because freedom of speech and all this gobbledygook anyway, that the Supreme Court wants to support. So people can just say, I'm going to Tilly's house with a shot-off shotty, and that's supposed to be a joke. and people just accept it. And then you get holes in your house, and you're to blame because it went all to smithereens. No, that's victim blaming. If anything, the cops are to blame for not doing their job when a crazed maniac is running the streets of the United States. Well, it's his right to own a gun. Well, number one, it depends if he's a felon or clearly this person is mentally ill. This is just like saying Diana Downs had the right to own a gun, but she doesn't have the right to blow her children away. Anyway. The son of Sam doesn't have a right to just blow random women to Kingdom Come. I think he did shoot some men. He doesn't have the right to do that. You do know that, don't you? Whatever that cop who was Darian, whoever he was, who blew away that Asian dude, that Asian cop, he went on a tear. You don't have a right to go on a tear because whatever. And that was spree killing, but whatever. So the victim blaming has has to do with what a reasonable person would do. Now, there's controversial ones about drunk people. Well, who's to say he was more drunk than she was? Maybe people shouldn't be drinking on the first date or getting so obliterated that they don't know who they're sleeping with. That used to be college culture where people got drunk and had sex. And that was the purpose of drinking, was to loosen up so you would be comfortable having sex. Now that's all assault and abuse. So that's a controversial issue. Well, this person's too drunk to consent to anything. Well, I agree if this person is passed out, but you can be hammered and look perfectly just as sober as I am. And we don't say that about drunk drivers, that we don't victim blame the family of four that's taken out because, well, and actually the bar gets in trouble for that because they overserve people. That's usually what happens, is the bar gets in trouble and licenses get yanked if it gets that bad. Every time somebody goes to this bar, there's a drunk driving problem. How much of this is a personal problem? That every time you drink, there's a calamity. You're the one who's drinking, not anybody else. And there's people, and I would say, then every married woman who's ever gotten married and had a glass of bubbly on her wedding night, which is her right to do as a woman, has been raped by her husband because they chose to get you have a right to get hammered on your wedding night. So do we have the great police? And that's why I think that we have police officers who check in periodically during the wedding night, like we did in the Middle Ages, where people would just stand over the couple in the bed. Like, is that what we do now? Do we have Gestapo cops that check every woman who's sitting in the car with a man and say, well, ma'am, I need you to fill out this questionnaire and see if you are sober and okay with sitting in the car with this man? I mean, how far does it go? How far do we go until people are taking personal responsibilities? You are the one who's drinking. You did choose to drink. So that's a controversial issue. And I'm assured, I haven't asked them, but I'm sure every single wife who drank on their wedding night doesn't consider themselves a victim. Um, anyway, there's controversial issues of, domestic violence where if it was so toxic, you know, why'd you wait so long to shoot him? Or, you know, what about men who get battered? Why, and there's been several times where they've been shot for leaving. And if society says that a man should never put a hand to a woman, on a woman, then what are their help? Do we victim blame them and say, well, you're the one who chose to live with this woman? And if she was so bad, why didn't you leave? We're not allowed to say that to women. That if he was that bad, you should have left. Um, there's been very, very several cases of men being shot in the back of the head near the door, leaving. And I would say if he was leaving, what was the problem? If you want him to leave, then he's going. Go get a restraining order if you're sick of him. And then the other course is, well, you don't know how a victim is going to act. Well, nobody knows how anybody's going to act. We don't know how a perpetrator is going to act. We don't know how an abuser is going to act. We don't. Nobody knows a person, and sometimes people don't even know them. There's school shooters who say, well, I don't know why I did that. I don't think that all of them who say that are lying or trying to be evasive. So, we don't know anybody's motivations for anything. So there are the controversial topics, but by and large, I'm not in favor of robbing people of their autonomy, of robbing people of their own brains, their own way of. I'm not robbing them of their accountability. That is part of being a human being. And sometimes you must ask, and I do too, and I have, on very uncomfortable situations. What did I do? Could I have done something different? Maybe I need to take accountability for at least half of this. Maybe I was wrong. And I can tell you one of the situations where I should have immediately left. And some of me would say, if it was so bad, why didn't you leave? And all you did was bitch and moan about how horrible these people were. Well, a clown has a right to be a clown. If they want to be a clown, you don't have to go to the circus with them. So, and that's part of my healing and part of my situation with the disordered people. Disordered people have a right not to get any mental help. Nobody has to go get any mental help. If you see what it is, leave. If somebody is blaming you for absolutely everything, even things that you cannot even control, is not even in your control, like somebody is acting like you are some type of god, and you're supposed to just stop the wind and fire and air and all this other stuff, and is blaming you for things in their life that you weren't even there for, or you didn't even do, and drawing you into drama and drawing you into pain and drawing you into strife, and is wanting you to be wrapped into junk, and is playing mind games with you, and the monkeys are appearing, and the triangles are beginning to play, you should leave. Let them play that by themselves. These are miserable people. And they're not going to stop being miserable until they get the mental health. And even then, you can't cure it. You can get treatment, it won't be cured. But that's not your job. Your job is to take care of you. And a lot of us have been guilted, especially in religion, especially in Christianity, where we've been told falsely by church people that if somebody else is upset, it is your fault and it's your job to fix, which it's not. That's teaching codependency. that you should literally mind the business of everybody else.